What are some psychology experiments with interesting results? White rats and black rats were raised separately without seeing each other. When a black rat was placed in the white rat's cage, the other rats ostracized him. When white and black rats are raised together and a new black rat is placed in a cage, the white rats accept him. So basically rats are racist, unless raised to accept differences. I'm late but nobody has said it yet. The self-fulfilling prophecy studies are very important to social psychology and their findings have many real-world applications. Basically they brought together a group of kids and formed a class with a real teacher. They gave the kids a test for overall academic skill at the start of the course, but didn't really use the scores. Instead they told the teachers that a few students, picked at random, were very brilliant and scores very highly. They then observed the class for a long period of time and noticed that the teachers gave the kids they thought were brilliant much more attention. At the end of the study the kids took the test again, and they found that the kids who were randomly named brilliant at the start actually scores higher than the rest of the class. The kids, again, at the start didn't score any different from the rest of the class, but through the self-fulfilling prophecy they became the best in their class. This obviously has tons of application in the world and especially education. The monster experiment. Although it is horrible how they left the children with mental health issues at the end, this experiment gave very good insight to how to parent a child. On this experiment, they took groups of orphan children and separated them into 3 groups. One was the control, the second were told they has a lips and were doing bad, and the third was told that their speech was perfect. As the experiment went on, Group 2 began developing lisps after being berated constantly. They became shy and reserved. They were scared to speak because they didn't want to get in trouble because of their poor speaking skills. Group 3, however, had the opposite happen. They talked better. They were more willing to improve. They were encouraged to keep speaking and told that their speech was amazing and perfect. By the end of the experiment, they had one group with no change, one group with now mentally ill children with a speech impediment, and one group with great speaking skills. It truly shows that encouraging children is the way to go and that verbal abuse can be just as, if not more, harmful as physical abuse. Not entirely sure it fits into the category but the Rosenhan experiment. 13 people feigned mental illnesses to get into mental hospitals and all were admitted with different diagnoses. They then assumed their normal personalities but to be released they all had to admit that they were mentally ill. There was a second part where a hospital challenged Rosenhan to send multiple fake patients to the hospital and they would rate their patients on a scale of whether they think they were faking. They identified many possible fakers, but Rosenhan in fact hadn't sent anyone. The 3 Christs of Ypsilanti. Psychologist forces 3 people who believe that they are Jesus Christ to live together. It does not go well. The psychologist, Milton Rokeach, had heard of a case where 2 women who believed that they were Mary, Mother of Christ, were forced to live together and one of them broke free from their delusion. So he figured, 3 Christs, what would happen? They were angry at each other, often had physical fights. They eventually started getting along by avoiding the topic. He would ask them about the others and each would say that the others were crazy. That they, of course, were the real Jesus. No cures, some unethical stuff. Interesting though. I'm a huge fan of Milgram's small world experiment. It is more sociology than psychology, but I still think it is really cool. Milgram sends out 160 letters containing the name and address of a stockbroker in Boston to people in Omaha, Nebraska. They had to send it to someone they thought would get the letter closer, but they couldn't mail it directly to the stockbroker. Interestingly, most people that sent on the letter sent it on to the same group of people on the 5th degree. It only took 6 people, hence the 6 degrees of separation, to arrive, on average. It shows how interconnected our world is, even before the internet, which is happy to think about. I loved learning about infant development. My favorite was probably the development of depth perception or perhaps the fear of heights. We're not born with it but, if I recall correctly, we develop it within the first year or so. Scientists created a raised square platform. Half of the floor was wood and the other glass. The actual surface of the floor, 1 meter or so below, was white with red polka dots. At varying intervals off age the babies would be brought in and placed on the wood end and encouraged to crawl to their moms who were standing at the glass end of the platform. In early infancy baby crawls over there without giving a shit. At some point though they stop at the point where the wood meets the glass, or plexiglass maybe, showing that they recognize the difference in height and the fear of falling. Babies' brains are pretty fucking cool. Reconsolidation. When you retrieve a memory from your long-term memory, it is susceptible to being manipulated. This can lead to memories being totally changed from the source. This is why eyewitness accounts cannot be fully seen as true. This knowledge is also being used to help people with PTSD by changing the negative memories they have of their particular trauma. It's not that psychopaths lack empathy, but rather, they have the manual settings. A specific region of the brain lights up when people experience empathy. For most people it's an automatic, subconscious, response. But in a study where they showed emotional videos to psychopaths and non while scanning their brains, psychopaths would only light that region of the brain when specifically asked to feel for the character, while the control participants would light up automatically. So, would it be possible to be some kind of benevolent psychopath? One who always or mostly chooses to empathize? I actually know someone like this. He can entirely control his empathy. He works in a children's burn unit and sees awful shit every day that would devastate a normal person. He explained his empathy was on a manual setting and that he does feel for his partner and a few friends, and he can act empathetic when needed. However, he could handle the brutal death of a child and whistle on his way out the door when he went home. This dude is using his lack of empathy to help kids that are hard to even look at for most people, because he recognized and embraced his difference. He has been my friend for a decade and it's kinda like being friends with a beau. Today I fucked up nice iguana. It is not like being friends with a dog or a cat. One time I participated in a paid research experiment. I was basically tricked into thinking I was drunk. I was placed in a room with 2 other people and we were instructed to drink vodka with cranberry juice over a period of time while we socialized. After we drank, I was placed in a room where I had to read some flashing words on a computer. I felt pretty drunk at this point. When the researcher came back into the room, he gave me my car keys and said I was never actually given alcohol. He briefly told me that because I was anticipating drinking for this experiment that my brain had tricked me into feeling the effects of being intoxicated. I immediately snapped out of it and was completely amazed at how I felt. I've done this to younger siblings and relatives that won't shut up about wanting to drink shots. We just rub a bit of alcohol round the rim of the shot glass and fill it with water. 3 deep and they'll start snoozing on the sofa within the hour. Enjoying the content? Don't forget to like and subscribe. We put out new videos every day. While you're smashing that like button, here's a meme to entertain you. Soloman Ash's experiment on conformity. He set up a test wherein he would show 3 lines of different lengths to 5 or 6 individuals, I forgot the exact number, who had to state which line was the longest of the 3. The thing is, only the last individual is the participant and the others are actors paid to answer in a specific manner. For the first few questions, they choose the correct answer, but later on they start choosing the wrong one. The participants are conflicted as to whether they will say the correct answer or conform to the wrong answer as to not be judged by others or due to self-doubt of their own answers. In the end, most do conform. It's really interesting since it shows how powerful conformity is in the face of doubt, up to a point that some even question their own sanity during the test. Another variation of the experiment also had interesting results. It had the same setup with 5 individuals with the last person being the participant. However, this time some of the actors say the wrong answer while one actor says the correct one. There was an increase in participants who would choose the correct answer and avoid conformity. It shows how much doubt one can have on oneself when alone, but be brought back to self-confidence when they find outside support. Edit. Conformity in participants might be caused by either being afraid others' judgment or due to self-doubt. Aron and Dutton, 1974. Misattribution of Arousal. Men who had just walked across bridge, either steady or unsteady, were approached by a female psychology student, posing to do a project on the effects of exposure to scenic attractions on creative expression. The men had to complete a questionnaire and write a short dramatic story about a picture she provided, and she gave them her phone number if they had more questions. Men who walked across the shaky bridge were more likely to call her up because they misattributed the arousal from the bridge to the woman. Too long didn't read. Watch a horror movie on the first date. Edit. Grammar. Sorry about the confusion. Not a psychologist, but the one where given a choice between sitting down doing nothing and shocking oneself, people tend to choose the shock. Ergo, we would choose pain over boredom. Curiosity over boredom maybe, stimuli, even, negative, no stimuli. I don't know the name of it, but apparently 2 people become closer if they survive through something together. Not even actual surviving death scenarios, but anything that has you on your toes and heart racing, like a roller coaster. Had to look it up, because I remember hearing about this one. Misattribution of arousal, not necessarily sexual arousal, but any sort of heightened or hairline emotional state. If you're with someone, your brain may link the 2. We looked at a case study of a couple who weren't that great for each other. They had fairly destructive tendencies and a good bit of argumentation, non-compromise, and tearing each other down. But they were wildly, crazy, rom-com level head over heels for each other. Their early dating included roller coaster rides, the car breaking down at 10 p.m. while it was snowing and they had to walk home miserable, the store being robbed while they were there, and a death in each family. Early dating included roller coaster rides, the car breaking down at 10 p.m. while it was snowing and they had to walk home miserable, the store being robbed while they were there, and a death in each family. Don't go giving people ideas. If you train a rat to press a lever for cocaine, and then put it in a box with only that lever, it will press that lever as much as you'll allow it. The rat will stop eating and drinking and just do cocaine. If you train a rat to press a lever for cocaine and then put it in an enriched environment, e.g., other rats to play with, toys, place to explore, where it could still press the lever for cocaine, it may press the lever occasionally but not as frequently as its counterpart in the dull environment. These findings were a big deal in the behaviorism world because they put a lot of previous results into context and help explain the link between poverty and drug use. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like this. I'm on mobile and don't have access to a computer right now, so linking sources will be difficult. But a Google search of Rat Park will pull up plenty of sources. I was wrong about the rats being conditioned using cocaine. It was morphine, but the idea is still the same. Many people have pointed out errors with these experiments, and there are plenty, but that's the beauty of science. It allows for the development of testable hypotheses which can change given the current state of evidence. Also, thank you for the silver kind stranger. Edit 2. This experiment does not prove that bad environments facilitate drug use or that good environments protect against it. Addiction is immensely complex and this is just a small piece of it. Dunning-Kruger effect is one of my favorites. Basically, people with less expertise in a field will overestimate their abilities in the given field because they don't know enough to see the limits of their expertise. At the same time, experts tend to underestimate their abilities because they know too well what they don't know. The phenomenon has, among other factors, been linked to anti-vaxxers, who overestimate their expertise, not seeing what they don't know, with dire consequences. There was an experiment to measure the dopamine, happiness, hit your brain takes when eating something you're craving. The dopamine builds with the anticipation and peaks right as you take the first bite. Then, after the first moment it's in your mouth, the dopamine levels begin to decrease. This showed that many times we are desiring, edited to show the distinction made by poster below, the attainment of the thing more than the thing itself. Edit, not to proselytize, but this corresponds somewhat to the Buddhist principle of unsatisfactory desire. It's very interesting. The Rosenthal effect, the prejudice and expectations you have towards a student/contestant/ etc. highly dictates his performance in the long run. Look it up, aka Pygmalion effect. I was at an educational weekend for teachers and the lecturer asked, or rather challenged, whether we want to know stuff about our students when we first start teaching them, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what we have to be careful about, etc. It broke my heart when a large number of teachers said yes. It made their job easier. I spoke up, saying it's better not to know anything except health and safety concerns because it's then easier to avoid prejudice, and some of them quite haughtily replied they are mature enough to avoid that, as if it's STH that doesn't happen subconsciously. It's sad teachers aren't taught these things while in training. Frown. Was a teacher in State of Me, USA. We were taught this.